Well, welcome everybody. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all to this event about cargo classrooms, and I'm really delighted to be chairing the event today. I've rarely been so stimulated intellectually, in a practical way, in every way, than I have been working with cargo over the last few months. So it's a great pleasure to be able to introduce them today and the fantastic work that they're doing around Key Stage 3 and the Cargo Classroom Initiative. So cargo, for those of you who haven't come across them yet, well, you soon will, you'll soon know all about cargo, but they're a collective of artists, of poets, musicians, activists, digital entrepreneurs, and generally great people, creative people that have come together, and educators who have come together around a common project to do something about the need to decolonize our education system, to make it more relevant and real for our learners in Key Stage 3. But also, you know, the idea is to extend that, and they'll be telling you a little bit more about that. This isn't a new initiative. It hasn't just come about as a result of people in Bristol deciding to topple Colston's statue. This is actually a long ongoing initiative dating back to 2016. Lawrence who will be talking to you very shortly, along with Charles Golding, who isn't here today, unfortunately, and Alison Hargreaves have been instrumental in driving this initiative forward. There was a book, a poetry anthology that was published back in 2016. Is that right, Lawrence? 2016?
The book was actually published in 2019, right. October.
Okay, yeah. And the university's association with cargo dates back to around that time, 2018,
yes.
Where the university first started working in partnership with cargo. We've been involved subsequently in an initiative called Universal City with cargo as well. And I can share a link to that initiative, that important initiative, which is aimed at reconnecting the university really with our city and with its diversity, with its people. So that's another fantastic resource. Of course, you know, we also need to think about this in terms of the university's trajectory. And I'm delighted that Professor Otele will be joining us later to talk about some of the implications of this work for the university and more generally. We've also got an input from Tracy, Tracy O'Brien, who's a teacher of history, who will be talking about the experiences of actually implementing this. So we're delighted to welcome those speakers as well. Tracy and Olivette, you're very welcome. Really looking forward to your reflections on this. So without further ado, I'll be quiet and hand over to Lawrence, if you want to take it from here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say good afternoon to everybody and just give a brief introduction to how cargo and this project came about. So as a young man growing up in the city of Bristol, there's a history that Bristol's very proud of that was very detrimental to part of my ancestry. So as a young man growing up in the city, I didn't feel that I belonged here. It made me very dysfunctional. It made me it made me against education, it made me against authority. And it actually later on resulted in me thinking that the only opportunities I had in the city with the history I was taught when my ancestors were just slaves and victims was the streets. And I lived on the streets for about 10, 15 years of my life. Later on, by finding information out there and looking in search of history that wasn't presented through school, I started to find things that gave me a sense of pride and made me understand that it was possible to achieve through intellect and through other ways than I'd been educated to. And that made me go and reinvestigate history. And that's when I realized there was so much out there that wasn't being taught. And then when it really impounded on me, the impact came when I saw my own children going to school 30 years later and being taught the exact negative information that I was taught. And I couldn't sit back and watch or leave to chance that my children and their friends and others may become the person I was as a younger person, because I didn't believe there's an opportunity in the mainstream society for us. And that is how Cargo came about. And so Cargo stands for Charting African Resilience, Generating Opportunities. And the story we're taught predominantly is a very victim-led story about people who had to go and be rescued and then civilized and then given their freedoms. And maybe once they've learned enough, they can, well, actually, when you check history, a world history, not just a Eurocentric history, the contributions that have come from the African continent are unprecedented. And that is what has been removed. And this is what Cargo has been put together to put back into the frame and to give us a world view of history that isn't from a colonial viewpoint to ensure oppression continues, that was created through something highlighted as the Great Empire, which there's definitely two sides to every story. And Cargo has come about to give children the ability to believe that all children are equal, all people have contributed, and all can achieve. And really, that's a brief introduction. I don't really want to talk about it too much. I'd rather let what we do talk for itself. Let's do this. So that there was just a brief overview of some of the work we've delivered on there. You've seen some of the classroom stuff, some of the Cargo installation, part of Universal City. But what this is all about now is about Cargo Classroom, which is 15 independent individual key skill level 3 lesson plans, which look at countering the bias of the current curriculum and empowering the narrative of people of African and African diaspora descent. That's really the, and bringing to light many unheard of contributions to society from people from the African continent. And that is what we presented Cargo Classroom to you with. And I think, next slide. Yeah, and so I suppose this goes back to what I said at the beginning about me not feeling that I belonged in Bristol, and how it made me feel completely disconnected to so much that should have been there to nourish me and to help me fulfill my potential. And this is what Cargo Classroom is about, why people have an understanding of this and to see how they belong and actually have contributed to society therein instead of being given access to something. And I think it's very important that that is understood. And there are different, as you can see here, there are different research models that have been done to show how important belonging is. And for most of the time I've lived in Bristol, I definitely felt like an other rather than part of Bristol's fabric. And through Cargo, we believe that this will help people feel more included and have a sense of purpose with their belonging and achievement that is attached to their belonging. Where, yeah, I don't want to say too much. I really want people to see the work. So it's the impact of a biased curriculum. So we've got the video to play.
So I thought that because to me, our history kind of started when we came here, when my parents came here. But then it goes back further than that, which is I'm starting to realise and know about that. But we didn't do a lot on Black history when I was at school.
There wasn't much of Black history that I can remember being taught.
I learned from my community more than it was in school.
I don't think I've really heard much before Nelson Mandela or anyone like that. Those people's been like the only people's been taught, and Black slavery is morely the negative sides. It's not the positives and the good things that we need to understand the truth of our community.
But there's other things that I know that I didn't find out till way after I left school that could have helped me.
It would give me a sense of more purpose, like to be kind of proud. I grew up thinking we just have to get through, you know, and get to a stage where I can get a job. Then that was it. Didn't really have a dream, you know, because you weren't really given that opportunity to have a dream. Do you know what I mean?
I'd be a more confident person in myself, knowing who I am.
I could have been more motivated or find more inspiration. I see things differently now. And I had to wait till I got older to see this stuff. Like I would have loved to see when I was younger, but because I had to get older, things change and part of my mind's already been shaped. When you find out new things, especially stuff that we didn't learn in school, I feel like it's reshaping my mind to the truth, to what's actually the truth that's actually out there, and then the truth that we've just been taught.
And we're slowly staggering with it at the moment, trying to find it ourselves, and that's because it was lacked in that curriculum, I guess.
I've been taught about Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King. I've been taught a lot about slave trade. There wasn't that much. I think they missed out a lot of information. I was learning about Black history. I want to know all about Black history, not just one timestamp. I would want to know more.
I find it really difficult to watch. And when I first watched it, I cried. I know all the individuals personally in that video. And especially my friend at the beginning, who's a very successful now entrepreneur and businessman. But to hear him say he couldn't see the point to even have a dream. Every time I watch that, I know exactly what we're doing as well. Because this information is still missing. There's still young people that are still repeating what he's saying. He went to school 45 years ago. I'm sorry, I've watched it, it just got me emotional. It just made it, I want to cry. Could we have the next slide, please?
Right, hi guys, I'd just like to echo what it is that Lawrence said. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm Kate O'Brien, I'm Head of History over at Chew Valley School. I previously worked near the centre of Bristol. I've been teaching over a decade now. Bristol's my adopted home, but I'm originally a Brummie, you might be able to tell from my accent. I'm here to talk to you about a teacher's perspective on why Cargo Classroom is both essential and an amazing, fantastic opportunity. So that links back to Lawrence's point, but also to this other research. So the Runnymede Trust singled out Bristol specifically regarding the way the curriculum's run up in our city and delivered to the children, and the lack of diversity that it provides. And that was just 3 years ago. The next slide. So that's local research, but also nationally, and anybody who's involved in kind of education knows that the importance of belonging at school, so not just personally, but as a way to make sure children can learn properly, is been well documented and is really important. So that really has an impact on how we have to think about what we do in terms of education for children and make sure that we can create that shared sense of belonging that Lawrence was talking about. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about my kind of perspective on this history as a teacher. That research kind of speaks to me and my experience as a teacher. My interest with getting involved in cargo goes back as same as Lawrence really to my childhood. So my family are, real history geeks. That's what we're always talking about around the kitchen table. My granddad was well into books and he would always buy me books about the history of our family. But I just never saw that at school, ever. So that really impacted the choices I made, not until I went to university, because it wasn't an option before then. But when I did, it was then I was taking options that were always about the African diaspora. So I felt like I could learn about my own heritage. So I go to uni, do my teaching qualification, flash forward to my first years in teaching, and I find that the only history of the African diaspora on the curriculum, even after all that time, is still slavery. Not only that, the focus of the curriculum is mainly on the mechanics of the trade. It's about, the kids are getting really excited about how there's all these macabre instruments and shackles that are used on the Middle Passage and plantations. Slave auctions and brutality are a real focus of those lessons, as if that's almost like, an exciting thing to teach about. It didn't have the true depth I felt of what was actually happening in the past. And then the imagery I felt was really damaging too. So the textbooks and the sources that were chosen for lessons really reinforced that idea that people of African descent was just racially inferior, and they reinforced that at every turn. So the classic book slave ship with all of the enslaved people packed in, whipping and dancing of women surrounded by white sailors, working on the plantation surrounded by white overseers, being sold to auction surrounded by white merchants, and then the so-called science of David Hume being used as a source to interrogate. So for me, these all, screamed of like intense racism, but there wasn't a whisper on the curriculum or between teachers about where these British attitudes came from or the way that they were built in order to justify this so-called trade. We didn't talk about how monarchs sanctioned the trade. We didn't talk about the involvement of the so-called heroes of Drake and Hawkins and Colston. There was no mention of the huge compensation paid at abolition to slavers. But more importantly, I think that any of that stuff, there's no mention of resistance or rebellion. People didn't discuss people as individuals. They didn't talk about Equiano really. Occasionally, Cinque from Amistad would get mentioned, but no children ever remembered his name or that he had real agency over his own history. And it just didn't ring true to me, and it never has. I just didn't understand this impression of mild manners, cattle-like subservience, and these little occasional singular shows of disobedience. It just didn't ring true with the understanding of my past, of my family, my friends, or even myself, or the history that I had studied. So I felt a real disconnect. So I know that teaching this topic about people of the African diaspora are improving and have done over the last 10 years. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that teachers before now, all of those images I've talked about, all of those ideas that have been taught without a lot of, rigorous looking at them are the ideas and imagery that all the people who teach our children have in their head. And we all have a responsibility to start to unpick those ideas because we can't get rid of those mental images. So what's the best way to do that? Obviously, cargo classroom. That's where it really comes in. So I want to talk to you now about why that's going to make such a big difference for teaching at Key Stage 3. So the lessons are really high quality. They're exciting and I would go so far as to say they're inspirational. So as Leon mentioned in the introduction, cargo has a multidisciplinary skilled team, and then there's also several experienced teachers. Myself, Kate Smee, Dan Warner, meanwhile, Dave Rawlins and James Boland. We worked together to craft things that will really fit in, complement, and more importantly, make Key Stage 3 really representative and exciting. So the ways that I think Cargo serves the curriculum, there's loads of them. I'm just going to talk about 3. So the Key Stage 3 curriculum states that history should allow students to gain historical perspectives by placing their growing knowledge into different contexts, understanding the connections between local, regional, national and international history. That's what Cargo lessons are shaped around. They illuminate historical perspectives and stories that people have just not heard of before, and they make the missing connections in Britain's past. So if you look at the story of Sam Sharp, for instance, it poses the
Tracy, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind ever so much just trying to increase the volume? I think people are struggling to hear you a little bit.
Okay, yeah. Is that any better? Lovely. Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
so the key, I'll go back a little. So the Key Stage 3 curriculum states that history should allow students to gain historical perspective by placing their growing knowledge into different contexts, understanding the connections between local, regional, national and international history. So the Cargo lessons are shaped around this exactly. They illuminate historical perspectives and stories that make up the missing connections in Britain's past, the bits that, when they come together, it really helps you to understand that whole story. So for the Sam Sharp lesson, it poses the question, how exactly is it that enslaved Africans successfully plan an uprising that spreads over 750 square miles and gives students the sources to then and interpretations to assess the significance of that movement and what happened and how that impacts the island of Jamaica and the people there, as well as political movements in England. Therefore, that allows us to question the Eurocentric narratives that have been established previously, and it creates a narrative that celebrates the resilience and visionary leadership of individuals that catalyse change, that for many of the students, they've never heard about. In this way, it enriches the history that they're taught. It allows them to connect the local, national and international dots, which is incredibly important for them as young historians. Cargo Classroom, as I said, has worked with lots of different teachers to make sure that the lessons fit everything that is required for rigorous, challenging lessons. So the fact that they're inquiry driven, the materials are challenging. We have a great range of sources and they help students to understand in depth about contrasting arguments and interpretations. So it allows them to interrogate those silences that are in the past and ask questions about what is it that our national narrative about the history of people of the diaspora is the way that it is. And that's what we want. We want real critical thinkers that are engaged with what they're doing in school, in the classroom. The lessons are also supplied with notes that make sure that teachers feel safe to do this so that they have the context of the wider picture, because they might not have it. So with Peaches Golding, there's the whole story of her life from America to Nigeria to Britain and how her role as Lord Lieutenant flies in the face of all of the statistics about black women in positions of power. These are all based on loads of story research by teachers, and they also give a guide to language, you know, for example, using enslaved rather than slave, or for talking about people of African descent rather than black, so that teachers and students can feel empowered to talk about what can sometimes be tricky topics within the classroom. The third thing in terms of how Cargo applies to the classroom is really straightforward, is that in 2018 the Royal Historical Association did a report on race and equality, and they found that there's substantial effort by teachers to try and change their curriculum to be more diverse, but they also found that there's considerable pushback as well. So the topic, the 15 lessons can be used in lots of different ways. We've got several little mini inquiries. They can be used all together. Really, they're crafted so well that they're quite low stakes options for teachers. They're easy to insert into your curriculum if you're nervous about it. But it discusses that presence of people from the African diaspora from well before enslavement, as Lauren said, in a way that is unprecedented and is not shared, and right up to the current time period. I think it's really important as well when we accept that students are have increasingly global connections, and so they're looking for that kind of depth of information that connects them with the rest of the world. And also the positive nature of the lessons means that it redresses the imbalance in the curriculum, and it starts to address the detrimental emissions that we can see are increasingly apparent from the reflections that we showed in the video and also the most recent research. So what makes cargo life fantastic and amazing? I'd say that there are several signature elements. The lessons are clear about the conditions people of African descent find themselves in, but they find a real humanity in those lessons. So the characters are not just sort of the roll call of the hopeless and the helpless, the kind of people I was sit to death for teaching about in the first few years of my teaching career. You have people like Mania of Maroons, who's living in the mountains of Jamaica, and she's made a choice to conduct guerrilla warfare against the British. It's not exactly the easiest way to live your life, but students will connect with that. There's a real sense of bravery and connection in that story. It also offers really strong, unique visuals. You can see the image of Sam Sharp on the PowerPoint in front of you, and we've got some other visuals to show you as well. There isn't anything else like this. There's some, sketches, line drawings of these characters, so it's very hard to come by these high quality visuals, and especially with all of the additional layers of information that are involved with them as well. I think that they kind of, when you look at Sam Sharp there, he could be your uncle or he could be your next door neighbour. It's a bit like when you watch videos of when the First World War is colourised and the footage is slowed down. All of a sudden you feel more of an innate connection with people that aren't necessarily like you. You don't have a lot in common, but you can start to find the common ground that gives you some connection. That's important when we're working with children, because that's the connection we want to provide with the past. It's along the way distant from where they are. So I think the most important thing that I'd like to end on in terms of why cargo is a great resource is that it's really new and exciting. It's not like anything I've ever seen as a teacher, and I've been searching for these histories for a long time. It encapsulates all of the things that students have been asking for. They've been writing to their head teacher. They've been petitioning for more diverse history in schools. It's the kind of stuff that children today want to see. It's what their parents want to see. We're getting an increasingly diverse student body, and these are the types of histories that they're looking for. So they're relevant, but they're also incredibly grounded in historical skills and principles as well. So the next few slides are the lessons that were carried out at Chew Valley School about Sam Sharp. So you've got traditional, 4-part lesson that you would have in school. So there's a bit of a warm-up to get them to think about Sam Sharp. And the next slide. And you can see there the beautiful visuals in the background. The kids responded really well to. Next slide, please. So there's the beginning of that context that we give teachers so that they can feel empowered to teach these lessons and that they know the history well enough to deliver them. Next slide, please. Okay.
Christmas uprising, rebellions and revolutions forced the hands of time, bringing forth an end to this most abhorrent crime. For centuries, the enslaved have been fighting for their freedom, while all from them was stolen by colonizers building a new kingdom. Samuel Sharp was born in the parish of St. James, Jamaica, 1801. In the turbulent times just before slavery's days were meant to be done. Samuel Sharp grew up to be an inspirational Baptist preacher who gained great status as an abolitionist, anti-slavery speaker, delivering sermons for freedom to his congregation, preaching slavery must fall with no more segregation. Samuel Sharp believed in God and the good in men, Due to his faith, he felt he could summon them to not fight but stand for this just cause, to resist by peaceful protest, breaking unjust laws. After many meetings and debates, it was finally agreed that action must be taken if they were ever to succeed. Christmas 1831, Samuel Sharp chose to start his peaceful protest when the sugarcane was due to be cut, so it would create much unrest. The peaceful protest began with strikes on plantations all across Jamaica, causing plantation owners to get whipped up into a state of hysteria. Word quickly spread that the protest had begun. A warship was called in to lay aim with its gun. Soon, the situation exploded and grew out of hand as people fought for their freedom in a stolen land. 10 days the uprising lasted, with over 60,000 of the enslaved involved, fighting for their freedoms, believing their actions should be absolved. In the aftermath, Samuel Sharp and over 500 others were brought to account. Many sentenced to be hung, their heads cut off and placed on a mount. The brutality of the punishment served had an escalating effect. It highlighted slavery's barbarism while undermining intellect. The abolition movement used their uprising to further their cause. It helped to accelerate the introduction of anti-slavery laws. In 1833, the abolition of the Slave Trade Act was finally passed, making a victory for all who had laid down their lives in slavery's past. I would rather die on yonder gallows than live my life in slavery, is the last will and testament to Samuel Sharp's spirit and bravery.
So that was the video that we showed in lesson. This is again one of the really great resources that Cargo offers, and the students were particularly enthralled by that too. I think the next slide is some of the illustrations. I'll just give you a little bit of time to look at those. So this is Nanny of the Maroons and Mary Seacole. You could probably, you know, if you recognise Mary Seacole, you can see some of the things she was famous for there. Then we've got some more.
Sorry, it's Queen Nzinga. Sorry.
Oh, is it Nzinga? Sorry.
Sorry.
My bad.
That's all right. I'll let you off.
So that's Imhotep on the right. It's Paul Bogle on the left, Lawrence.
Yeah, that's right.
We've got another slide as well. So Carmen Betford on the left and Cleo Lake on the right. For me, this is like a history teacher's dream. These kind of resources can be used in so many different ways in classrooms to get children interested, to get them to make predictions about why the people are important, to reflect on them as interpretations on the past or sources that have come out from that are a part of what's being created in multimedia today. They've got loads of really great uses. I think we might, if we've got a slide of several.
Yeah,
that's all with the illustrations together.
Yeah, that's all the collection now. All 15 images. So I'll quickly run them through. So we've got I Wish, which is actually me, the very first slide, and that was the poem that created the journey. Then we go to Imhotep. That's he lived 5,000 years ago, his representation. Then the next one comes in talking about Bristol's explorers, which is on the ship shape and Bristol fashion. So it covers the period when Europe went out and claimed lands. Then we go to the next one, which is Queen Nzinga, which is a bounce off the Bristol trade. Everybody talks about Colston, but when Colston was doing his work, Queen Nzinga was doing hers. And I'd much rather hear about what Queen Nzinga did than Edward Colston. Then we've got Nanny, then we got Dutty Bookman, Haitian Revolution, then we got Samuel Sharp, then we got Paul Bogle, then we got Mary Seacole, then we got Marcus Garvey, then we got the Windrush generation, then we got Carmen Beckford, then we got Marvin Rees, Peaches Golding, and Cleo Lake brings us up to 2019. And this will continue. There will be more people to add to this collection. But this is, in a sense, what you're looking at is an alternative view of a history commonly taught as the transatlantic slave trade. How does it look to you?
You're not sure. That's good. It's good for us to pause then, because that's going to be really relevant, Lucy, to the rest of our lesson. So it's good to be thinking about those things already. Cordy, what do you reckon?
These people have actually lived on this earth and have actually gone through these things, and poetry really shows the emotion they're feeling, and it helps us feel emotions back. It will stick in your brain and you'll remember it more.
You need to learn your history to know who you are, and importantly learn that culture and history, so you still have that ideals going forward and that cultural heritage going forward.
So this is the people who have been involved with creating Cargo Classroom as a package of lessons.
Right. And they've been working hard.
Yeah.
That's for real. That's for sure. I tell you that. So next slide. Yeah. Well, I think you've had a look at what we're presenting and why. It's to break down the barriers for inclusion. It's to make all people feel that they contributed and welcome. And it's the truth is, it's to rehumanize a narrative that has been so dehumanized for so long. And this is really what the whole thing is a human story. And we're just trying to rehumanize what has been taken away. And really that's what it is. It's funny because right now we've got COVID-19 and people are worried about social distancing. Well, because of the histories that have been taught previously, I've experienced social distancing nearly my whole life. Yeah, and I'd like people to be able to feel that they could walk closer to me in a normal environment. And I believe then people have a better understanding of who people are. There won't be so many scared people out there who think they need to be scared of the big black man when they realize how much that they have contributed to society and women. And I think that's what the big disparity is. And yeah, Cargo Classroom is there to rehumanize a narrative which has been so dehumanized and benefits still so many to keep the status quo exactly where it is. That's why even with this project, we've done this project through private investment. Schools might talk it, no one's invested to do it. The government's trying to take it in the opposite direction. It's often been a conversation piece. My work was meant to be used in a project back in 2009 to do exactly what never got done, but people got paid a lot of money not to do it. So independently, we have forced this through to be done. And now it's started to get recognized. And we just hope that you can all see the worth and the value in the work that we are creating. Yeah, and the main thing is this, there's a huge barrier that I know to education. The Cargo Classroom is free to all. There is no purchase fee, there's no buy-in. Once this is created and it's available online, anybody in the world who can access the internet can access this resource and have it for free. Because I think the biggest barrier to learning has been financial. So that's the one thing we wanted to remove. So maybe that's why people didn't want to back it, because we're giving it away, we're not selling it. Yeah, but that's Cargo Classroom. I look forward to delivering it to you very shortly. But next slide. If we just read that. I think we welcome chats after this. Yeah, main thing, the big thing for us and for Cargo, we've enjoyed presenting to you, but we're really looking forward to hearing your views on what we're doing. See anywhere where you see where we can be stronger. Any critical question, please ask and say anything you feel to say in the question and answers. Nothing can be said wrong and nothing will be taken in offence. That's just one thing I want to say for the Q&A, because it's very important for us to hear what you think of what we're doing. Next slide. And here's a moment I've been excited about. I'm really looking forward, and I'd just like to welcome Professor Oliver Otelli.
Thank you so very much, Lawrence, and everybody. Thank you for joining this. Just a bit of background. It says I'm a member of Cargo, board member. When I was asked by Lawrence to join the board, I said yes. I remember, I don't know if you remember, I didn't even think about it for a long time. I just said yes immediately. Why? Simply because this is about doing. We talk a lot, we talk about what we want to do, how we're going to do it, but we don't do. And I love doers. And this is why I got engaged. And because the vision that they have about teaching and learning history really completely appealed to me. And I wanted to support the movement, and I will continue to support the movement. Now, what do I think about all this? I would like to to talk a bit more about the question of relevance. Cargo classroom, cargo movement as a whole is relevant. Why is it relevant? Because this is a topical question. We've been battling for decades about including the history of people of African descent, Black history into European history, into British history. And the question comes on and off. You know, it comes, people get really excited, annoyed about it for others, and then it disappears. And I don't want that to disappear. One of the arguments is we can't just teach the history because it's relevant to the present time. Let me tell you, we have been relevant for centuries. So I consider that this is not a moment. This is incredibly important. And having the means to back what we're saying, what we've been teaching within our communities is incredibly important at all levels. The other thing that is interesting for me is that another question we've been talking about is who teaches that history? It matters immensely to me. In 2018, I became the first female Black professor in history in the country. As incredibly wonderful as the news is, it's a damning record on what is happening within the higher education, but also within the educational sector. And it tells you something. It means that we have to be able to teach and learn that history. We have to have people who look like us, not only to teach our history, but all histories. And that is something that, again, is very close to my heart. So what Cargo is doing is not just providing material, providing content, it's actually building up the long history of Black activism, of Black scholarly production. And I want to emphasize this because it's not a material that people can use, it's inscribed directly within the line and standing on the shoulders of many other initiatives that people have been working on for centuries. We have been teaching our own communities for centuries. The second thing I would like to say is that Cargo is teacher-centered. In other words, as you have seen earlier, teachers can add on, can go in any other direction they want to go. And just to give you an example, Sam Sharp is himself inscribing into the history of Black activism, resistance, and uprising. If we go back earlier, Nanny, Queen of the Maroon, also the same thing. Well, in the 1790s, a lot of those who rebelled were deported in Canada, in Nova Scotia in particular, but not only in Nova Scotia, but also in Southern Ontario. And their descendants have been there for 3 centuries. Well, those descendants were again sent to build up Sierra Leone and Liberia in Africa. See, so it's a history of migration that you can teach there through that one person. And once in Nigeria, Liberia, Sierra Leone, what happens is that 20th, 19th, 20th century, some of them were, again, traveled back to Britain. And they are today Black British. So you have a full circle. There's so many things you can do with this material. So the third thing I would like to say is, of course, it's student-centered. It's about what matters to them. It's about them being able to listen to teachers within the classroom, but this material could also be used online. So it's about virtual learning at the age of COVID-19. This is material that is transportable. You can even create small rooms within this material, online virtual small rooms that engages people, and encourage students to talk and to work perhaps by groups of 3 or 4 on a specific topic, and then you bring them back again to the main room, and all this online. So it's absolutely fantastic. Finally, because I could go on, but I won't, cargo movement is wonderful. It's a wonderful way to bring local, regional, national, international knowledge within the classroom. So for me, one of the most crucial things is that it values community, local expertise. And having this presentation today is really about bringing that extraordinary wealth of knowledge, not only in the classroom, but also in higher education, as some of you who are present today are part of the University of Bristol and other universities. So it's about valuing the contribution of people of African descent who are not within the higher educational system, telling them that your knowledge is contributing to the history of this country. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. So, well, we're going to finish with the poem that started this whole journey. This poem was written I wrote this poem, I think the end of 2005. And this poem is called I Wish. I wish as a boy growing up that more of my history was shown. There was so much missing that could have helped me before I was grown. The history I was taught helped to fill me with anger and pain, because it taught me that my ancestors were slaves with no name, captured, kidnapped, traded, and taken from their home. That's what I remember, what my ancestors were shown. So when it came to history lessons, my interest was none, because whenever it covered my ancestors, they were savages and dumb. But many years after leaving school, my interest started to grow. And that is when I realized there was so much I didn't know. Much of what I was taught in school and told was fact was really like someone explaining all your life on just one act. There is so much to be proud of, so much that has been achieved, but without going in search of the truth, I would have been deceived. From kings and queens that built great nations, to teachers and scholars that helped with our educations, from people who stood up to what they saw was wrong, to people who risked their lives to help the sick get strong, from warriors that fought with so much pride, to all the people who for our cause died. These are just a few facts I found that turned my anger to joy, and I just wish they were taught to me when I was a boy. That's the poem I Wish. And that is why Cargo exists, to bring a wish into reality. Next slide, Q&A when you're ready. Can we put up the images?
The illustrations.
Yeah, we'll end with those. And
yeah, wonderful.
Back to you, Leon, you can handle, you can share Q&A.
Sure, yeah. First of all, what a wonderful poem, what a wonderful set of pictures, what wonderful videos and wonderful contributions. Thank you so much to the speakers, Lawrence, Olivette, Tracy, wonderful. Okay, we've had some very positive feedback. Can I just ask, whilst I'm reading out one or two of the feedback comments, people just post any questions that you have for the team, and we'll address those. So we've had a few things. Lots of people saying, Jessie said, so amazing, so very needed. Feel so hopeful about hearing about all this. So lots of people have been saying how hopeful it makes them feel, which is great. Especially in the context of all the censorship that we're facing at the moment around the national curriculum, Black Lives Matter and all that kind of thing. So lots of very positive things there. Eleanor has pointed out there's beautiful street art of Carmen in St. Paul's. For those of you who are unaware of that, it's worth that's a nice shout out there. Nicola has said the emotional engagement, both by you, Lawrence, but also by everyone who's spoken really, is really important. And that, you know, when we're teaching as educators, we've seen so many lessons deal with these issues as a series of events and facts. Poetry and art is a good way to do this. The student was right there. So, you know, again, very positive feedback. I've got a couple of questions from people already for the team. So Yentel, I don't know, Yentel, whether you want to, if you're still with us, would you like to just talk to your question? Okay, I'm not sure whether if Yentel's left us or whether it's just a technical issue. I think she's still here.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. I was just unable to unmute with the help of the host.
No
Thank
worries.
you so much for this presentation. I ask a very practical question as an ESRC funded PhD student in the law school. When I first started at the University of Bristol Law School, I had to attend compulsory lectures, and I wondered whether, as a practical means of integrating cargo at the University of Bristol, whether we could consider integrating cargo amongst these introductory compulsory lectures that we have to attend. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm not sure if there's anybody from the law school or elsewhere who can respond to that. But Olivet, I don't know whether in general, you know, you'd like to make a comment about the relevance of this kind of material for what we do here in the university.
I don't know how to do it because I'm too new, but it's definitely something to consider and to pursue. And I would say that the first step will probably be, Yentel, hello, we've met, would probably be to push within your school for that to happen. And then it can then escalate. We can then escalate it because, well, head of schools are responsible for whatever content and whatever things that are involved. But it's a brilliant idea, yes.
Great, okay. I've got another question here. Annika, do you want to ask your question?
I can try. Can you hear me? Yeah, oh,
Yeah,
see me too. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I should say to Yentel, actually, I'm also from social sciences and law at the university. So if you want to speak, drop me an email. I'm actually from economics. We run a big project with our first years from when they arrive on inequality in Bristol and the history connected to it, as well as modern day data, I guess. The aim being to get them thinking about economics in a very real social way, connected to the people and the place that they're in. I'm not convinced we're doing it well. And really, I just want to say thank you. I know that you've spoken about this in the context of Key Stage 3, but I think there's an awful lot I could use from this in constructing those projects with our students as well, and empowering them to tell their research better, even though they're first years. So it was really just a thank you rather than a question.
Yeah, with thank you, and we've had a few thank yous. Mary Phipps has said, thank you for all the hard work in putting cargo together. Mary, by way of context, I'm privileged to know Mary. is a teacher herself from Bristol schools, is saying this history resource will be invaluable for a wide range of people. Okay, Julia, you've got a question. Julia Paulson, do you want to ask your question?
Leon, it's Aradhi here. I think Julia unfortunately had to leave at 1, but she's asked me to speak to her question, which was about whether those discussions of the resources could feed into broader discussions about reparations, or indeed the relationship between history teaching and reparative possibilities. So I think she was wondering whether that had been part of the discussions in the development of these resources.
Okay, Lawrence, I don't know whether you want to respond to that.
What about reparations?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a big old question, isn't it? Reparations need to be addressed. Part of this here is about self-reparations. This is about us putting ourselves back together before looking for what others need to return to us. So we can't keep looking for others to put us back together, because it doesn't work. It's not going to work to keep the status quo how the status quo is so happy to be right now. They can say what they want. Listen, it's set how it is. So we went out to just create this regardless. Like my t-shirt says, funny enough, no permission required. I don't need no permission to go and do the work I need to do. I just go and do what I believe is right. Reparations will come. Yeah, Africa had everything taken from it. Yeah, the resources. So yeah, reparations is part of the story, but it's a bit down the road. First of all, we need to have some strength of ourselves and our own independent wealth, and then we can demand what should be returned rather than asking someone to give back what was stolen. Oh no, reparations is definitely part of the journey. And as we get stronger, we're there to demand the return. At the moment, we're just trying to find the bits of our identity that have been so fractured around the world. So let's put ourselves back together, we'll humanize ourselves, and then we will. Yeah, we've got a lot more to do. This is a gentle beginning. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Oliver, I know this is a topic that you've thought about as well.
It would need a whole new sessions, because it's multifaceted. It's local, it's regional, it's international. Things are happening all the time. Contradiction, challenges. So for me, if you want to link this to reparation, then you would be doing a disservice, because this is produced by a lot of people from African descent. So it's about claiming our place in history. It's also about, as I said, inscribing this within a long tradition of Black activism. So yeah, reparation, we could talk about it, but I want to celebrate what has been done here today. That's it.
Great, okay. Thank you very much. Tracy, there's a pedagogical question in the chat that's quite interesting, and I know that Olivette said the resources were teacher-centered, but also learner-centered in your presentation, Olivette. Tracy, is there an underlying view of pedagogy? This is from Robin Shields. Is there a model, a pedagogical model that's underlying this approach? Oh, she can't. I think Tracy's having technical problems.
No, that's fine. Okay. What we've mainly focused on is looking at the most recent pedagogy that come out, specifically history teaching. So one of the most important things is about like that widening of vista. So thinking about how do we elevate the voices of people of African descent so that they become integral to the parts of the lesson. So the sources won't just be from the same historians that you would normally see in KS3 textbooks. They'll come from lots of, so as well as the poetry and the visuals, they'll come from lots of different sources that you won't normally see, and we're elevating the voices of scholars from places like the West Indies and scholars of African descent here in Britain as well. but then packaging it around what makes a really good, rigorous, challenging lesson for any school anywhere in the country. That's kind of like our base point, so you can just pick it up and run with it. And then, as Olivet said, then you can make changes if you're looking at something particular yourself.
Great. Okay, that's wonderful. And there's a question from Laura. So I'm just reverting to reading the questions out directly now because there's a few of them and I want to save time. But if I misrepresent your question, please do come in and chip in at any point. But Laura's wondering whether you consider collaborating under different subjects such as science. So, you know, I mean, obviously this is a history resource, and very often in these kinds of, very often subjects such as history and English, there seem to be a bit more amenable for this kind of work. But what about subjects like science, Lawrence?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, can hear
right,
you.
Yeah, my screen's gone funny. All I've got is 6 little screens. I've got none of the fittings. Would we be interested in doing other work in sciences? And yeah, of course. This is what we do. We want to. This is the beginning, but yeah, we're looking to explore and to do more to bring other narrative stories and information to the forefront. Yeah, so yeah, we'd be up for a talk.
Great, and there's so much that can be done. Lara, did you want to come back there? I see you've appeared on my screen. You asked the question. Did you want to respond to Lawrence? We can't hear you, I'm afraid. You're muted.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
No. So it's just something that I've been thinking about in terms of science, and not so I don't want to dilute the historical message, because it's important that we keep like the history lessons to do with Black history as well. But science also has a job to do in implementing all the additions that people of colour, people of different genders and disabilities have actually contributed to science, which it generally fails on a roundabout basis. And I was wondering if this is an initiative that we like, something you would be willing to partner with and talk about, because I think it is important, but again, it's hard. Like doing this work alone, obviously, is quite a lot. So
I think, yeah, well,
sorry.
you know Imhotep.
Yes, I do. The first physician in the world who was a Black man. He was a multi-genius.
So we're
and
already
also mother for Set.
So we're already on the same page.
Very much so.
It already steps like that's why Imhotep is so important in this journey. My son's middle name is Imhotep because I was making sure that he was going to learn who Imhotep was, and he wasn't going to be the evil guy from the Hollywood movie The Mummy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, we'd be we're interested. And what I could do so we can think. If you can take down this email address, and if you can contact or send any information to Alison Hargreaves at Cargo Movement. Oh, is it just Alison? Sorry.
Just Alison knows, right? Don't worry.
I'll let Alison send us an email. What is it? Alison? Alison at cargomovement.org.
Okay.
And,
could you write it in the chat, and then I could easily.
I would if I had my full screen.
Okay, I'll do it. Okay, Alison Hargreaves.
It should be on the slides after, but yeah, or if you look it up, you find it. But any queries to anybody, please send them in to that email address, and after we will correspond with what we can do.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay, that's really helpful. Great, we got. I really like this because we got a plan going forwards as well. That's good. Okay, Jesse, you wanted to come in at this point. Jesse Abrahams.
Thanks. Sorry that I was muted. Yeah, thank you. I don't know what I'm going to say. I just really wanted to say thank you. I feel so emotional as well, and I come from Bristol, as well, Lawrence, from a community in Bristol, and this has just made my day. It's really intense right now. I know I shouldn't even be in this talk because feels like a luxury and so far from what I should be doing, and my inbox is full, but yeah, I haven't got a good question because it's just made me feel very emotional. But basically, I was wondering whether Akala is supporting you and whether whether Akala's kind of involved in this or offering any support or could be, and what we can do, if there's anything I can do. And I wanted to speak, I said something to Leon, which was in relation earlier to somebody's question from the law school about bringing this into university context. And I just wanted to say, I'm thinking to anyone else who's like a lecturer at the moment, that it feels to me, anyone in lecturing in education, it's quite obvious, but I've suddenly realized I'm having such a direct influence with my students who are teaching right now in classrooms. And like, we have a lot of students who are part-time studying with us and things. And I've just found talking to them, basically just raising more awareness, and raising awareness, I guess, of cargo will just help for me to start kind of raising awareness of your resources so teachers can know about that. Yeah, but I'm just wondering if there's anything else I could do, and I'm very keen to get involved when I have time, but this is very close to my heart and my research work. So yeah, and thank you.
We know Akala isn't involved, but we would take any support from anybody, especially, Akala's at the forefront of pushing lots of different narratives and that'd be amazing. But yeah, we kind of put our head down and just driven forward with what we felt was needed to be done. And some of it is a bit single-minded, and we weren't looking for distractions. So we've just driven forward. But we've popped our heads up now. Yeah.
Good to see you.
Yes, and we've done the work. Like I keep saying, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to work and let the work talk for itself. And no, we're looking for support. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for advice, collaborators, and like this whole Q&A is about critical questioning around what we're doing. And to be honest, I've been enjoying the Q&A.
It's good. Thank you. And I was just wondering, just to follow up on that Akala point, was that's because of what you said? Or I don't know Akala really personally, but I have reached out to him before, and he's spoken at an event for me. So it just made me think that I might pass.
Yeah, I did say about him, and we've met a few times.
Okay, so yeah,
we've crossed paths in environments, I think. But here with the Bristol project, because as I said before, I'm a father of 4 young men in Bristol. So this is a very personal and important thing to have been done here first. So, and I said, I didn't want it diluted by having other people involved either. I am a bit of a control freak, I'm not going to lie.
Oh, that makes sense. I see what you were saying. I just wondered then if he was now aware, but it sounds like he's aware, obviously.
He's aware, yeah. But, if you can make him more aware, there's no problem with that.
I was just thinking anybody who's big and who is an influencer at the moment to be aware.
That's what we're looking for. Yeah. Anybody. We're not in competition with anybody. What we want to do is get this to be received. We're giving it away. There's no competition. We're giving it away. Yeah. Whatever can
getting people to use it and take it, though, isn't it?
People to take it, use it.
The main thing is about how we might do
Tracy.
That.
Hang on, Tracy.
So I think, because a lot of people are talking about what can we do to get it out there. So the government's been very clear on its shift in terms of Black British history. It's not interesting. This is where cargo comes in, because it is a free resource. So, for instance, Laura, what you were saying about science, I think my pushback that I've had as a teacher is sometimes when you say to people, well, are you thinking about diversifying your curriculum? Because I'm involved in that at my school. They say, well, there's just not really anything out there. And we all know that that's not true. So when you see the quality of cargo lessons, I think that if you present this type of stuff to people in your department and show them what can be done, it shows them that it is possible. It also shows them the great contributions that people of African descent have made that they're not aware of, because they've all grown up being taught that this isn't a thing. So even using cargo in your department, whether they're science or art or whatever, starts to build the greater good of cargo, because it helps to unpick people's preconceptions that they have. and teach them that that's not the case. And there's a lot more out there if we just go looking for it. And then if they share it with someone else, it has that multiplier effect. That's the same as if you just share it also with your local schools. If you send the link, if there's somebody, if you send it to the governors, because we need to pressurise it from a place of what we expect our children to be seeing and getting access to. So the more people that can see it and the more people talk about it, the more traction Cargo is going to get. And it also gives people a base, because sometimes people are worried, especially if you're talking about teaching a whole hour about a character or an individual related to maths or science. So if I'm African descent, people who are teaching are concerned that they're going to say the wrong things. They can see the tone of the lessons, they can see how they're structured, they can see the language that is used, and then they can get in touch with us and collaborate with us, or they can try and produce some resources of their own to spread the message.
Fantastic. All right, well, Ruth Bailey has just said that's really helpful, Tracy, thank you. And that's really important intervention, actually. We had somebody else was asking, how do we put pressure on the government as well as on schools to change, to introduce this kind of thing into schools. So maybe we can come back to that in a moment, but I've had somebody, I wanted to invite Eleanor in at this point, if that's okay. Eleanor, you had a question. You've been waiting for a little while.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of, obviously you did express earlier that you've encountered quite a lot of frustration when trying to get government to pay attention to Cargo, or at least like act along the lines of Cargo. And I was kind of essentially asking, are there ways that we as the audience, or we as kind of not members of Cargo but appreciators of it, can apply any pressure to those governmental bodies?
Okay, Lawrence, do you want to respond to that?
I think some of it is what you can do is you can talk about it, you can promote it. And this is what we did. It's like the government has said, we're not going to invest in this, we're not going to invest in that, and there's all the barriers. So that's why we've just created it anyway. So it's been created, it's accessible, it's for free. You can access it and download it from a digital connection. So the question I used to get away with it before is, we haven't got money to invest in this, we haven't got to do this, so we can't do it. Well, we've done it. It exists, it's free, it will mark against the curriculum. Now the question is, why are you not using it? You can't say something doesn't exist, it does. So before they had an excuse, well, now it exists. So my thing is this, I call it pulling your pants down, yeah? It exists now, it's out there. Now if a parent goes to a school to ask a school if they can access this free resource for the curriculum, and then the school starts saying no, then I think we've got a road to go down. But before that, well, it's not there. Actually, we can't afford it. Our budget can't extend. Well, this is a free resource that you can use. Now tell people you are not engaging with something that we all know is so needed. So, like I said, I'm not asking the government. I'm not in, like, we are where we are because of their non-action. So we'll create that it's there, and then people, I believe people, when they see it, they will demand to use it. And then we'll see how the schools can say no to something that is to such a high quality and cost them nothing.
Okay, that's great. Nicola, Warren Lee, can I bring you in at this point? Because you had a question about curriculum time that might be relevant here. Okay, I'm not sure if Nicola's still with us or is able to contribute, but let me just ask a question in that case. She asked a practical question about curriculum time, and perhaps that's something for you, Tracy. I mean, one of the pushbacks that we sometimes get. Go on, Nicola. You can.
Sorry. Yeah. Hi. I was finding it tricky to unmute. Yeah. Thank you. I've got. When I posted that question, I think subsequently lots of it has been answered and discussed. But just to say thank you so much, particularly for the poem, Lawrence, there at the end. That was really good, really moving, and it was just reminding me of a great TED talk that I watched. I'm sure you've all seen it, The Danger of a Single Story. And also I was thinking about the history. I mean, I'm a geography teacher, but I have taught humanities in the past and worked with history teachers. And so I have some experience of working with school textbooks, for example, which I feel portray Black history in a very narrow sense, and a single story there, certainly. But Tracy covered a little bit about how Cargo can offer more and widen that story and help teachers, particularly perhaps non-specialist history teachers, to widen the story and get a real sense of what the possibilities are for teaching Black history in schools. And I think it's also a question of balance. And I suppose one of my questions is where teachers have limited curriculum time, what is the balance that they should be teaching in terms of the really important stories of slavery and so on, but also bringing in those more wonderful and positive stories that are really important as well. And linked to that, I suppose, thinking about these resources that look like they're going to be fantastic. Is there any plan for sort of peer support or ongoing kind of conversation between teachers about these resources, kind of to activate the resources in the classroom, particularly for those that haven't got the confidence or necessarily the specialism to really bring them alive?
Great. Okay. I'll hand over Tracy. I wonder if you'd like to try and address that one. Very quite practically focused in some ways.
I think you have to choose from the offer that Cargo presents in relation to what your children need. So you will know at your school what the common misconceptions are, and then take from Cargo what will address these. I think you just have to get in there with SLT and have a really honest conversation, because I think if in this day and age we're still teaching about a guy who murders 6 of his, is murdering his wives, with Henry VIII, if that's a thing that we're still talking about today, for me that it doesn't hold any weight, that is somehow more important than what Cargo's setting out to do. So I think having that really rigorous conversation about the relevance and need of a curriculum for children today and what that is and how Cargo fits into it. And the Cargo resources kind of come with all that reasoning as well, so you can go in ready armed to have that conversation and talk about what part of your curriculum you're going to drop and why this is better. And because it has all the rigor and the challenge in as well, there shouldn't be too much of a problem in terms of that, really.
Thank you, Tracy. Well, one issue that often comes up in these conversations is about the role of teacher training. And I was really pleased that Kate and Hawkey and 1 or 2 of my other PGCE colleagues provided feedback to some of this material. But I wonder if either Ruth or Kate would like to just reflect on the extent to which this kind of material could be integrated into teacher training at Bristol or elsewhere. Sorry, Ruth and Kate, I've kind of caught you on the slide there. I don't know whether you're able to respond to that.
Hi there, can you hear me? Sorry, I couldn't unmute at that time. It's Ruth Bailey speaking. I'm not sure if Kate is she in the meeting? Is she here? I haven't been involved.
She was here earlier, but I'm not sure if she
has gone. All I can say is that we are tremendously happy to have those meetings, the resources available to us, and we have shared them with our student teachers. They will be shared with our student teachers, as well as this. We invited them to come to this session, and we'll be putting this up on our shared area. They're in school at the moment, so it's not so easy for them to participate today, but those things will be disseminated among them. And it's something that we are going to be working on this year in terms of our development plan and looking at how we decolonize the curriculum that we're looking at with our student teachers. So it's, you know, it's on our agenda, and we have, I think I put in the chat that we have 4 scholarships available to increase the number of Black or mixed Black heritage student teachers that we can recruit. So we have, there's scholarships of £2,500. We've got 4 for 4 years. So it's a kind of a long-term program or long-term project to increase the number of Black teachers that we are training at the university, which I think is, you know, we're really grateful that the university have allocated those funds to us. It's not a lot of money, but it's, you know, we want it to be something that brings being a teacher and, you know, being a Bristol teacher and being a Black teacher, you know, makes more people think of this as a route, and that they feel welcome at the University of Bristol. So I put the links up on the chat, so I'd be really grateful if people could share those, or contact me if you want to know any more details about that. So I'm going to stop now. I don't know whether Kate's here, but I'm going to stop now.
Okay, Kate, I'm not sure whether you want to come in at this point. Okay, I'm not sure if Kate's still with us actually, but I wonder, you know, just as a follow-up question, whether Lawrence, you know, you've targeted or tried to target teacher training in the past.
That to me?
Yes.
Well, that's part of what we're looking at working with the University of Bristol at the moment as an ongoing partnership. Is it PSG? I can't remember the proper term because I'm not actually a teacher, but we're working with teachers with the university faculty to look at providing those resources. It's the next step of where this project is. So yeah, they've just asked a question about where we're going, and that is exactly what we're looking to do next, is to empower and teach the trainers, the teachers, so that they can feel comfortable to deliver this.
Yeah.
A lot of them are frightened of delivering it.
Yeah.
That's the thing, there's actually a fear.
Yeah. And of course, you know, a related issue is that we have a serious underrepresentation of African and African diaspora teachers in our schools. So we have, you know, across the BAME community altogether, I'm not entirely comfortable with that term, but it's 30% are from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds of our learners, but only about 5% of our teachers. And within that, I think only even much smaller percentage are from African and African diaspora heritage. Tracy, I don't know if that accords with your experience and whether you think that makes a difference.
It makes all of the difference. I think Nadine just put in the chat the fact that, you know, we need representation, but then but we still need the curriculum as well, because it's a long old slog when, you know, like Lawrence said about people say, well, it's not out there. Somebody actually said to me once, I said, I think, you know, as you've been thinking about increasing the diversity in your art curriculum, and he said, well, I would, but there's just not really many good artists of African descent around. And I wish I could tell you that was the only conversation I've had like that, but it's not. I have those conversations again and again and again. And it's just completely, education steeped in that kind of attitude. And we've got to start somewhere, like Lawrence said, if you've got these quality materials in front of you, you can't keep saying that this history doesn't exist. You can't keep saying that the sources aren't good enough, or there's not enough interpretations out there, all of the different kind of things that are levied as valid reasons for not teaching this history. But that can be very exhausting as a teacher who comes from African descent background. It can be really hard going, and that is something that we desperately need to change, because it's very hard for me then to tell children to come into the profession.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Okay, we're kind of running out of time, so I just wanted to read out a couple of comments, and whilst I'm reading those out, maybe each of our 3 presenters could just think of a concluding comment, something to say in conclusion. But I wanted to just read out what Navin said in relation to my colleague, I think it's my colleague, Navin Kikabai, and I'm not sure if you're still here, Navin, but he says, going to government for permission, I don't think so. And then he said, of all the social changes that have occurred, it has been rooted in the ideas of groups and individuals. And in that vein, Laura has suggested that anyone who would like to connect about decolonizing science, going back to our earlier conversation, and tackling our scientific community, please email her. And she's left her email in the chat. So yeah, great initiative. I hope I'll certainly be emailing you, Laura, because that's an area I started off as a science teacher. I'm very interested in that personally. So I think it's a great area to take forward.
Going back to Navin's, was it Navin?
Yeah,
that
Navin,
question just before.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, the whole city has been fully aware of what Cargo's been doing for the whole 4.5 years. And the only investment Cargo's received so far is from the University of Bristol. Yeah, private and Arts Council. But when it's come through the government or even through the city, yeah, as in the city council, cultural team, all of those things, they haven't seen the value in this.
No.
So I'd like to say, so that's why we don't go to government, and we don't go to them anyway, because even when we did, and to this day, they haven't seen value in what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can say that, you know, we continue to learn a lot from our collaboration with you. I can't speak on behalf of the whole university, but from my personal encounters with you, it's been incredibly informative. And, you know, there's obviously so much positive that in that collaboration going forward. So I hope we can sustain it. But I wonder if in conclusion, because we're coming to the end now, whether the panelists, whether the presenters rather, have any final comments you'd like to make. So Lawrence, starting with yourself, is there anything, maybe reflecting on the discussion today, any final points you'd like to make?
The journey's only just beginning. This is the beginning of a journey. I'd like to just give out the cargomovement.org web address to go in. Also, at Cargo Movement on Instagram, where people can keep up to date with upcoming projects. And we've still got a few things to come out that we're working on right now. And just keep your eyes out for Cargo. And if you can, please support what we're doing, and please support the work, and let everybody know that this and it exists. It's here, and it will be available in its entirety very, very soon. And thank you everybody for tuning in, Leon, and everybody on the panel. It's been a joy.
Thank you, Lawrence. That's great. Tracy, do you have any final comments you'd like to make?
Thanks everybody for being so positive and hopeful about this. This is exactly what we need for this journey. So the hope is great, but keep up your actions as well. Share it, pressurise, tell everybody until they're bored of hearing about it. Thanks for joining us.
Great, thank you, Tracy. And, you know, well done on your fantastic work. I'm definitely going to come visit your school one day. Those lessons look really inspiring. Olivette, did you want to make any final comments?
Yes, thank you everyone, first of all, and thank you the whole team, Cargo's whole team, those behind the scenes working a lot, immensely grateful. I would like to say that each one of you might not be able to change your community or your institution, but you can actually use that material to teach your children, your nieces, your neighbors. So please do that, because that's the only way forward. Don't wait for people to pick up on this. You have the power to do it yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a fantastic note to end on. So yeah, just I think we've had a lot of people. There's Navin actually. Nice to see you, Navin. We've had a lot of people sending very positive messages about today, thanking everybody for the wonderful presentations, and you know, it really has been incredibly illuminating, but also very energizing. And I think we're all leaving with a spring in our step, hope in our hearts, and a fire in our bellies to take this important work forward. Lawrence, you continue to inspire. Behind you, there's Charles, I know, Charles Golding, and Alison Hargreaves, the whole team.
Yeah.
Wonderful job. Thank you all so much. And let's hope we can all connect again soon around this important work. All the best, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Olivet, Leon. It's been a pleasure.